My wife sold my late father's antique watch, the one he gave me on his deathbed, without telling me, and used the money for a solo vacation. When I confronted her, she didn't apologize. She smiled and said, "You weren't even wearing it anymore." My hand started shaking. But before I begin, please like and subscribe to the channel. And we'd love to hear which part of the world are you joining us from. Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. The afternoon light came through the kitchen window at that particular angle that only happened in late October, golden and tired, casting everything in amber. Ryan Holloway knelt on the linoleum floor, a screwdriver in one hand and a cabinet door balanced against his knee. The hinge had been loose for weeks, one of those small things that gnawed at him every time he opened it. The screw holes had stripped out from years of use, and he was trying to reposition the hardware just slightly higher where the wood was still solid. The house smelled like coffee from that morning and something faintly sweet. Maybe the air freshener Danielle had plugged in near the entryway. Outside, someone was mowing their lawn. The sound drifted through the walls, that steady mechanical drone that meant Saturday in suburban Ohio. Their street was one of those places where every house looked almost identical, white siding and black shutters, driveways that all sloped the same direction, trees planted at regulation intervals by the developer 15 years ago. Ryan twisted the screw carefully, feeling the resistance as it bit into fresh wood. His lower back ached from the angle, and he shifted his weight, the knee of his jeans pressing into the floor. This was the kind of work he actually enjoyed. Fixing things, making them right again, the satisfaction of a problem solved with his own hands. The front door opened. He heard it before he saw her. The distinctive sound of the lock turning, the creak of the hinges that he kept meaning to oil, the rush of outside air that changed the pressure in the house. Then the wheels of a suitcase, that plastic rumble across the threshold and onto the hardwood of the entryway. "I'm back," Danielle called out. Ryan didn't look up yet. He was at a delicate point with the screw, trying to get seated properly. "Hey," he said. "How was Arizona?" Footsteps moved through the house. He heard the suitcase being left somewhere in the living room, heard her heels, the one she only wore when she wanted to feel different, taller, more like the version of herself she posted online. Then she was in the kitchen doorway. Ryan glanced up. Danielle looked good. That was the first thing he noticed. She had that glow people got from trips. New sunglasses perched on her head, her skin slightly darker, her hair lighter from the sun. She wore clothes he didn't recognize, a flowing white top that looked expensive, jeans that fit perfectly. She looked like someone from a catalog, someone whose life was going exactly as planned. She smiled at him, that particular smile that made him feel small somehow, like he was the one who'd been sitting at home waiting while she was out living. "It was amazing," she said, moving past him to the refrigerator. She pulled out a bottle of water, twisted the cap off. "You should have come." "Couldn't get the time off work," Ryan said. He'd had this conversation with her before she left. His vacation days were spoken for, and someone had to keep paying the mortgage. "Right?" She took a long drink, checked her phone with her other hand. The screen lit up her face. Messages, notifications, the evidence of a life that existed somewhere beyond this kitchen. Ryan turned back to the cabinet, finishing the last screw. He tested the door, opening and closing it. Solid now. No wobble. He gathered his tools, stood up, his knees cracking slightly. He was 34, but felt older sometimes. He wiped his hands on his jeans and looked at his wife. Really looked at her. There was something different in the way she stood, the way she held herself. Confidence, maybe, or indifference. He couldn't tell which. "Where's my dad's watch?" he asked. The question came out more direct than he'd intended. He noticed it was missing from his dresser 2 days ago, right before she left. He'd looked everywhere, the drawer, the bathroom counter, the pockets of his jackets. It wasn't a watch he wore often, too valuable, too sentimental. But he kept it, and he knew where it was. Always. Danielle didn't answer right away. She set her water bottle down on the counter, scrolled through her phone for another moment, then looked at him with that same calm expression. "I sold it," she said. The words hung in the air between them. Ryan felt something cold slide through his chest. "What?" She leaned back against the counter, relaxed, like they were discussing what to have for dinner. "I needed money for the trip. And honestly, Ryan, you never wore it. It was just sitting there, The smile that followed wasn't apologetic. It wasn't nervous. It was confident, almost proud, like she'd made a smart decision and expected him to understand. Ryan's mouth went dry. His father had given him that watch 2 days before he died. 2 days. Ryan had sat in that hospital room with its fluorescent lights and its smell of bleach and disinfectant and plastic curtains that didn't quite close all the way. His father's hand had been cold, the skin papery and loose over the bones, and he'd pressed that watch into Ryan's palm and said, "You take care of yourself, son." Danielle knew that. She'd been at the funeral. She'd held his hand while they lowered the casket. She'd sat with him in this house during the weeks after when everything felt hollow and impossible. She knew exactly what that watch meant. "You sold it," Ryan repeated. His voice sounded strange to him, distant. "I got a good price," Danielle said. She picked up her phone again, scrolled through something. Some guy online collects vintage watches. He was actually really excited about it. Ryan felt heat rushing through his chest, up his neck, into his face. His hands clenched at his sides. "That watch was my father's." "I know," Danielle said, still not looking at him. "But it's not like he's going to miss it." The casualness of it hit him like a physical shock. The way she said it, like his father was just some obstacle that had been conveniently removed, like grief was something that expired after a reasonable mourning period. "Danielle," his voice was harder now. "You didn't ask me." She finally looked up from her phone, meeting his eyes. "I didn't think I needed permission to access things in my own house." "My house," Ryan said before he could stop himself. "The mortgage is in my name. The down payment came from my father's life insurance. This is my house." Something flickered across Danielle's face, surprise, maybe, or anger. She wasn't used to him pushing back. "Oh, so now we're keeping score? Is that what we're doing? You sold something that didn't belong to you. Everything in a marriage is shared, Ryan. You don't get to decide what's yours and what's mine." She crossed her arms. "And if you actually cared about that watch so much, you would have worn it. You would have kept it somewhere safe instead of letting it collect dust in a drawer." The logic was twisted backwards, but she delivered it with such conviction that for a moment Ryan felt off balance, like maybe he was the one being unreasonable. Then he remembered his father's hand, cold in his. The weight of the watch when it was pressed into his palm. The quiet understanding in his father's eyes. The unspoken knowledge that he was saying goodbye. "You had no right," Ryan said quietly. Danielle's expression shifted. She set her phone down, and her eyes started to glisten. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, wounded. "Why are you being like this? I just got home. I thought you'd be happy to see me." But Ryan saw it now, saw the technique in it, the way she could shift from confident to victim in seconds, the way she deployed tears like weapons. "I want the money back," he said. "Or I want the watch back. One or the other." Danielle's tears vanished as quickly as they'd appeared. Her jaw tightened. "The money's spent, Ryan. I used it for the trip. And I'm not buying the watch back from some collector because you're having a tantrum." "A tantrum?" Ryan's voice rose. "You took something that belonged to my father. Your father's dead." Danielle shouted, loud enough that he took a step back. "He's been dead for 8 months. When are you going to move on?" The words echoed in the kitchen. Outside, the lawnmower had stopped. The house felt suffocatingly quiet. Ryan stared at his wife, at the woman who'd promised to stand beside him, at the person who'd turned his grief into an inconvenience. "Get out," he said. "What?" "Get out of the kitchen. I need to think." Danielle laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. "You're not serious." "I'm completely serious." She grabbed her phone and water bottle, shaking her head. "You're being ridiculous. But fine. I'll give you your space to have your little meltdown." She walked past him, and he smelled her perfume. Something new, something she'd bought in Arizona. At the doorway, she turned back. "When you're ready to be rational, we can talk like adults." Then she was gone, her footsteps fading up the stairs. Ryan stood alone in the kitchen. His hands were shaking. He pressed them flat against the counter, feeling the cool laminate under his palms, trying to steady himself. The cabinet door he just fixed opened and closed smoothly when he tested it again. Perfect. The small satisfaction he'd felt earlier was gone, replaced by something else, a hollow feeling that went deeper than anger. He looked around the kitchen. The coffee maker that had been a wedding gift. The calendar on the wall with Danielle's handwriting marking her trip. The photos on the refrigerator held up by magnets. Him and Danielle smiling on some beach, at some restaurant, at some moment when everything had felt different. When had that been? When had they last looked at each other the way people in those photos looked at each other? Ryan walked to the living room. Danielle's pink suitcase sat on the floor, still zipped, covered in stickers from places she'd been. He stood there looking at it, and his mind started working, pulling at threads, following connections he'd been avoiding for months. He thought about the credit card bills that appeared like clockwork, maxed out, always with some explanation about stress or necessary purchases. He thought about the Instagram posts, carefully filtered photos of meals, sunsets, posed moments that suggested a life much different from the one they actually lived. He thought about the conversations with her friends where she painted him as distant, unsupportive, the villain in her narrative. He thought about the time she'd borrowed money from their joint savings for a weekend trip with her sister and never mentioned it until he noticed the withdrawal. About the Amazon packages that arrived almost daily, full of things they didn't need and couldn't afford. About the way she'd started describing herself as an entrepreneur, even though she hadn't held a job in 2 years. And he thought about his father's watch. The pattern clicked into place like that cabinet hinge, finally seating properly. Danielle never took responsibility. She never apologized. Not really, not in a way that meant she'd change. She just rewrote the story until she was always the victim, always the one who'd been wronged. And Ryan had let her. For how long? Years? Had he been ignoring this, telling himself marriages required compromise, that every relationship had its problems? He sat down on the couch, suddenly exhausted. The house was too quiet. He could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, could hear a car passing outside, could hear nothing from upstairs where Danielle had gone. His father had been a quiet man, careful with words, someone who believed in actions over explanations. On that last day in the hospital, after he'd given Ryan the watch, he'd said something else, his voice barely above a whisper. Don't let people take advantage of your kindness, son. There's a difference between being good and being weak. Ryan had nodded, not really understanding then, focused only on the fact that his father was dying, that they were having their last conversation. But maybe his father had seen something. Maybe in those final days, with everything stripped away and only essential truths remaining, he'd recognized something about Danielle that Ryan had been too close to see. The watch wasn't the beginning. It was proof. Proof that Ryan had been making excuses for behavior that had no excuse. Proof that kindness without boundaries wasn't kindness at all. It was just surrender. He sat there as the afternoon faded, as the golden light dimmed and went gray, thinking about all the small moments he'd dismissed, all the red flags he'd painted green in his mind. When Danielle finally came back downstairs, hours later, she acted as if nothing had happened. She microwaved leftover pasta, scrolled through her phone, hummed quietly to herself. Ryan watched her from the couch, and for the first time in their marriage, he didn't feel anger or confusion or hurt. He felt clarity. The days after Danielle's return had a strange quality to them, like living in a house where all the furniture had been moved 2 inches to the left. Everything looked the same, but felt fundamentally wrong. Ryan went to work at the distribution center where he managed logistics, came home, made dinner, went through the motions. Danielle acted as if the fight about the watch had never happened, as if her casual cruelty had been forgotten or forgiven. But Ryan hadn't forgotten, and he hadn't forgiven. He'd started noticing things he'd trained himself not to see. The way Danielle staged photos of her breakfast before eating it, adjusting the angle of the plate 3 times to get the light right. The way she talked on the phone to her sister in a voice that was slightly different from her normal one, more dramatic, more wounded. The way she left messes for him to clean up, then complained that he never helped around the house. One evening, about a week after her return, Ryan came home to find her sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open, looking at something intently. "Hey," he said, setting his keys on the counter. She didn't look up. "I'm working." "On what?" "My business plan." She said it with emphasis, like the words themselves meant something important. "I'm starting a consulting business, helping people with their personal brand." Ryan opened the refrigerator, pulled out ingredients for dinner. What kind of consulting? Social media strategy, content creation, that kind of thing. There's a real market for it. He started chopping vegetables for a stir-fry. Have you done any research on what licenses or permits you might need? It's not that kind of business, Ryan. It's freelance. Her tone suggested he wouldn't understand. Right, he said. Have you gotten any clients yet? I'm in the development phase. She closed the laptop with more force than necessary. Why are you interrogating me? I'm just asking questions. You're being negative. You always do this. You can't just support me. You have to poke holes in everything. She stood up, grabbed her laptop. I'll work upstairs where I can actually focus. After she left, Ryan continued cooking, his movements automatic. Development phase. That was new. Last year, it had been a photography business that never took a single paid job. The year before that, a jewelry line that consisted of 3 necklaces she'd made and never tried to sell. The pattern was always the same. Excitement, big plans, blame when nothing materialized. He ate dinner alone, cleaned up alone, then sat in the living room with his laptop. He'd been thinking about the watch, about what Danielle had done with the money. She'd said she spent it on the Arizona trip, but that didn't make sense. She'd booked that trip months ago, had used their joint credit card. He'd seen the charge. Ryan opened their bank statements, started going back through transactions. He wasn't looking for anything specific, just trying to understand. What he found made his stomach turn. Over the past 6 months, while he'd been working 50-hour weeks, Danielle had been spending. Not just spending, burning through money. Online shopping, restaurants, services he didn't recognize. And cash withdrawals, regular ones, always just under the amount that would trigger a bank alert. He added up the numbers in a spreadsheet. The total made him feel sick. He heard footsteps on the stairs. Danielle appeared in the doorway, wearing pajamas, her hair pulled back. She looked younger like this, vulnerable. It was easy to forget, in moments like these, the calculated way she operated. What are you doing? She asked. Looking at our finances. Her expression shifted, became guarded. Why? Because we're drowning in debt, Danielle. We're behind on 2 credit card payments. We have maybe $1,000 in savings. And I just found out you've been taking cash out of our checking account almost every week. I needed that money. For what? She crossed her arms. Various things. Why does it matter? It's our money. It matters because I'm the only one earning it, Ryan said. He kept his voice calm, but something in his tone must have changed because Danielle's posture went rigid. Oh, here we go, she said. The breadwinner speech. You think because you have a job that means you get to control everything. I think it means we should at least discuss major expenses before they happen. I don't need your permission to spend money. You do when spending it means we can't pay our bills. Danielle's face flushed. Maybe if you made more money, we wouldn't have this problem. Did you ever think about that? Maybe if you'd actually try to move up at work instead of just being content with mediocrity. Don't, Ryan said quietly. Don't try to make this about me. Everything is about you, Ryan. Your schedule, your needs, your precious dead father's watch. Her voice had risen to a shout. I'm suffocating in this house. I gave up my career to marry you. You never had a career. You worked part-time at a salon for 8 months. The words came out before he could stop them, and he saw them land like a slap. Danielle's mouth opened, closed. Her eyes filled with tears. How dare you, she whispered. How dare you diminish my... I'm not diminishing anything. I'm stating a fact. You're being emotionally abusive. The accusation hung in the air between them. Ryan felt something crack open inside him. Not anger, but a kind of bleak understanding. I want you to leave, he said. What? Leave the house. Tonight. Go stay with your sister. Go stay at a hotel. I don't care. But I need you to leave. Danielle stared at him. You can't kick me out. This is my house, too. It's my house. My name is on the mortgage. The down payment came from my father's life insurance. You know, the father you think I should just get over. You're insane, Danielle said, but her voice wavered. You're having some kind of breakdown. I'm having clarity, Ryan said. Maybe for the first time in years. He stood up, closed his laptop. When he walked past her toward the stairs, she grabbed his arm. Her grip was tight, desperate. Ryan, stop. Let's talk about this. I'm sorry about the watch, okay? I'm sorry. I'll try to get it back. He looked down at her hand on his arm, then at her face. She was crying now, real tears, her mascara starting to run. A year ago, he would have folded, would have told himself that marriages had rough patches, that love meant forgiveness, that he was being too harsh. But he saw it now, saw the technique, saw the performance. She wasn't sorry about the watch. She was sorry she was facing consequences. "Let go of me," he said. She released him, stepping back. "Where are you going?" "To bed. You can sleep in the guest room. Tomorrow, we'll figure out next steps." "Next steps?" Her voice went shrill. "What does that mean?" Ryan didn't answer. He climbed the stairs, went into their bedroom, locked the door behind him. His hands were shaking again, but this time it felt different. Not from anger, from the sheer effort of standing his ground. He could hear Danielle downstairs, talking on her phone. Her voice drifted up through the vents, high and emotional. "Completely lost it, out of nowhere. I don't feel safe. No, I don't know what triggered it." Ryan sat on the edge of the bed, listening to her construct her narrative in real time. Tomorrow, everyone she knew would hear about how he'd verbally attacked her, how he'd tried to control her, how she'd been walking on eggshells for months. By the end of the week, he'd be the villain in a dozen different versions of the story, each one carefully edited to remove any inconvenient truths. But for tonight, in the silence of the locked bedroom, Ryan felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. He felt like himself. The next morning arrived gray and cold. Ryan woke before dawn, a habit from years of early shifts, and lay in bed listening to the house settle around him. No sound from downstairs. No movement in the hall. He got up, unlocked the door, went downstairs to make coffee. Danielle was asleep on the couch, still in her pajamas, her phone clutched in one hand. She'd fallen asleep texting someone, probably her sister or one of her friends, probably still building her case about what a monster he was. Ryan made coffee quietly, took his cup out to the back porch. The yard needed work, leaves piling up, the fence starting to lean in one corner, the garden his mother had helped him plant 3 years ago, now overgrown and wild. He'd been meaning to fix all of it, but there was never time, never energy left after managing Danielle's chaos. His phone buzzed. A text from his brother, James. "You okay? Got a weird voicemail from Danielle last night, saying you were having some kind of crisis." Ryan sipped his coffee, typed back, "Not having a crisis. Finally having clarity. Call you later." The response came immediately, about time. That afternoon, when Ryan got home from work, he found Danielle had left. Not permanently. Her suitcase was still upstairs, her toiletries still in the bathroom. But the house had that empty feeling that meant she'd been gone for hours. She came back around 6, carrying shopping bags, wearing a new outfit. "Went shopping," she announced, setting the bags on the kitchen table. "I needed to clear my head." Ryan looked at the bags. Designer logos. Expensive stores. "With what money?" "I have my own money." "From where?" She pulled out a new sweater, held it up against herself. "My mother sent me some. She was worried about me after I told her what's been going on here." "And what did you tell her is going on?" Danielle folded the sweater carefully, not meeting his eyes. "The truth. That you've been acting strange. That you're trying to control my spending. That you told me to leave. I didn't tell you to leave permanently. I asked you to give me space for one night. That's not how I remember it." She pulled out another item, a pair of boots. "But whatever. I'm here now. I'm trying to make this work despite everything." Ryan watched her unpack her purchases, each item a small statement of defiance. She was showing him that his concerns about money meant nothing, that she'd continue doing exactly what she wanted, that he had no power to stop her. "Danielle," he said carefully, "we need to talk about our marriage. I'm not doing this right now." She gathered the bags. "I'm tired from shopping. I'm going to take a bath. We can't keep avoiding this." She turned in the doorway. "You're the one who locked yourself in the bedroom last night. Don't talk to me about avoiding things." Then she was gone, her footsteps loud on the stairs, the bathroom door closing, the lock clicking. Ryan stood in the kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of her spending, feeling the weight of it all settle on his shoulders. How had he let it get this bad? How had he convinced himself that this was normal, that this was what marriage looked like? His phone rang. "James." "Hey," Ryan answered. "Tell me what's going on." Ryan walked out to the back porch again, closed the door behind him. "Danielle sold Dad's watch. Silence on the other end. Then, she did what? Sold it. To some collector online. Used the money for her trip to Arizona. Jesus Christ, Ryan. She doesn't think she did anything wrong. She said I never wore it, so it didn't matter. More silence. James had always been quieter than Ryan, more internal, but when he spoke, there was a steadiness to him that Ryan had relied on since they were kids. What are you going to do? I don't know. I asked her to leave last night. She's still here. Is the house in your name? Yeah. Mortgage, deed, everything. Why? Because if you want her gone, you can make her leave. Legally, it's your property. Ryan hadn't thought about it in those terms. He'd been thinking about marriage, about commitment, about the vows they'd made. But James was right. The legal reality was simpler, cleaner. She'll fight me on it, Ryan said. Let her. Do you want to stay married to someone who would sell Dad's watch and then act like you're the problem for being upset about it? The question was rhetorical, but Ryan answered anyway. No. Then stop asking her to leave and start telling her. Tonight, after they hung up, Ryan stood on the porch for a long time, watching the sky fade from gray to darker gray. Inside, he could hear the water running, could hear Danielle moving around upstairs. She was probably taking a bath with some expensive product she'd just bought, probably already texting her friends about what a nightmare her husband was being. He thought about his father in that hospital bed, about the watch pressed into his palm, about the quiet warning that he'd ignored. When Danielle finally came downstairs, her hair damp, wearing a robe, Ryan was sitting at the kitchen table with a notepad in front of him. What are you doing? She asked. Making a list. Of what? Things that need to happen. He looked up at her. First thing is, you need to move out. Not for one night. Permanently. Danielle laughed, but sounded forced. We're not doing this again. We are. I want you out of the house by tomorrow night. Her expression changed, shock, then anger, then something calculated. She pulled out a chair, sat down across from him. Ryan, I know you're upset about the watch. I get it. But ending our marriage over this is. It's not about the watch. Not just the watch. It's about everything. Everything. She repeated the word like it was absurd. We have one fight, and suddenly everything is a problem. We've had 100 fights. I'm just finally paying attention. Danielle reached across the table, tried to take his hand. He pulled back. Her eyes went wet. Please don't do this. I love you. I know I've made mistakes, but we can work on this. We can go to counseling. I don't want counseling. I want you to leave. You can't throw me out like garbage, Ryan. I'm your wife, and you're welcome to stay at a hotel until we figure out the divorce. I'll give you a week to pack your things properly. But tomorrow night, you're sleeping somewhere else. You wouldn't dare. Her tears had dried up, replaced by something harder. You don't have a spine for this. Ryan stood up. I'm going to my brother's for the night. Why come back tomorrow? I expect you to be packed and ready to go. If you're not, I'll start moving your things myself. You're bluffing. He grabbed his keys from the counter, his jacket from the hook by the door. I'm not. Ryan. Her voice followed him as he walked to the door. You'll regret this. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. He stopped, hand on the doorknob, looked back at her. She was standing now, her face flushed, her hands clenched into fists. She looked dangerous. Not physically, but in the way a cornered animal looks dangerous, ready to lash out in any direction. The biggest mistake of my life, Ryan said quietly, was not doing this sooner. He left. The night at James's house was the first peaceful sleep Ryan had gotten in months. James lived alone in a small ranch house on the other side of town, a place that felt spare and calm, no clutter, no drama. They'd stayed up late talking, James listening while Ryan finally let himself say all the things he'd been holding in. She's been telling people I'm financially abusive, Ryan said at one point, staring at the beer in his hands. Because I got upset about the spending. That's projection, James said. She's the one who's abusive. She just knows that if she says it first, people will believe her version. I feel like I'm losing my mind. You're not. You're waking up. Those feel the same sometimes. The next day, Ryan went to work, put in his hours, went through the motions. He texted Danielle around lunch. I'll be home at 6. Please be ready. She didn't respond. At 5:30, Ryan's phone exploded with notifications. Danielle had posted on social media a long, emotional message about surviving difficult times, about standing strong in the face of adversity, about how sometimes the people closest to you can hurt you the most. She didn't mention him by name, but anyone who knew them would understand. The comments were immediate and supportive. Stay strong, and you deserve better, and I'm here if you need to talk. Ryan read through them, feeling a strange detachment. This was her strategy: build an army of supporters who would validate her version of events, who would see him as the villain without ever hearing his side. When he pulled into the driveway at 6, Danielle's car was there. The lights were on in the house. He sat in his car for a moment, gathering himself, then went inside. Danielle was in the living room, surrounded by boxes and suitcases. She'd been packing, but slowly, deliberately, like she had all the time in the world. When she saw him, she didn't speak, just continued folding clothes into a box. "You're really doing this," she said finally. "I told you I was. I called my lawyer." She looked up at him, her expression cold. She said, "You can't legally kick me out. This is my home too, regardless of whose name is on the deed. If you force me to leave, I can sue you for illegal eviction." Ryan had been expecting this. James had warned him. "Then I'll file for legal separation tomorrow and petition the court for exclusive use of the marital home. That'll take weeks. I have weeks." Danielle stood up, walked toward him. "Why are you being like this? This isn't you, Ryan. Someone's getting in your head. Your brother, probably. He never liked me." "This is me," Ryan said. "Maybe for the first time in our marriage, this is actually me." "You're going to regret this," she said, her voice dropping to something almost intimate, almost dangerous. "I'll take everything. The house, the savings, whatever's left after you've ruined both our lives. You think you're being strong right now, but you're just being stupid. Take whatever you want." Ryan moved past her, started checking the boxes. "Just take it from somewhere else." For the next 2 hours, they existed in the same space without speaking. Danielle finished packing. Her clothes, her laptop, her collection of cosmetics, and hair products that took up an entire box. Ryan helped carry things to her car, not out of kindness, but to speed up the process. When the last box was loaded, Danielle stood by her car, looking back at the house. In the porch light, she looked small, and, for a moment, Ryan felt something like pity. Then she spoke. "I gave you the best years of my life." The self-pity in her voice killed whatever sympathy he'd been feeling. "You should go. I mean it, Ryan. You'll never find anyone better than me. You're going to die alone in this house, and you'll remember this moment and realize what you threw away. Goodbye, Danielle." She got in her car, slammed the door. Through the windshield, he could see her crying or pretending to cry. He couldn't tell anymore, couldn't separate the real from the performed. Her car pulled out of the driveway, brake lights flashing once at the end of the street, then gone. Ryan stood in the driveway for a long time after she left. The night was cold, and he could see his breath in the air. From somewhere down the street, he heard a dog barking. A car passed, its headlights sweeping across him. He went back inside. The house felt different now. Emptier, but somehow larger, like pressure had been released. He walked through the rooms, noticing what she'd taken and what she'd left. She'd left the photos of them together, he noticed. Left their wedding album sitting on the shelf in the living room. He sat down on the couch, the same couch where he'd watched her construct her victim narrative over the phone, and felt something unexpected. Relief. Not happiness. It was too soon for that, too raw. But relief. The kind of relief that comes when you finally stop carrying something that was crushing you. His phone buzzed. A text from James. "How'd it go?" Ryan typed back. "She's gone." "How do you feel?" Ryan thought about the question. "How do you feel?" "Sad. Angry. Free. Exhausted. Certain. Better than I have in years," he typed. The response came immediately. "Good. Now the real work starts." The first thing Danielle did was file for divorce. Ryan received the papers 3 days after she'd moved out, delivered by a courier who'd knocked on his door at 8 in the morning. He'd stood there in his work clothes, coffee mug still in hand, staring at the envelope with his name printed on it in cold, official typeface. Inside, the demands were breathtaking in their audacity. Danielle wanted the house. Not half the value of the house. The actual house, the physical property that Ryan had been paying the mortgage on for 6 years. She wanted spousal support, a monthly payment that would nearly equal his entire salary after taxes. She wanted half of his retirement account, half of his savings, half of everything he owned. And at the bottom, in a section marked grounds, she'd cited emotional abuse, financial control, and cruel treatment. Ryan read the papers 3 times, sitting at the kitchen table, feeling the words rearrange reality around him. This was her opening move, her way of establishing the narrative that she was the victim of their marriage, that she deserved to be compensated for her suffering. He called the lawyer James had recommended, a woman named Catherine Briggs who specialized in divorce. Her assistant scheduled him for the next day. The office was downtown, above a coffee shop, with plain furniture and certificates on the wall. Catherine was in her 50s, with gray hair pulled back in a bun and glasses that made her look like a professor. She read through Danielle's filing while Ryan sat across from her desk, his hands folded in his lap. "She's claiming emotional abuse," Catherine said, not looking up. "That's going to be her primary strategy. Paint herself as the victim, paint you as the villain. Do you have any documentation of the actual issues in your marriage? Like what? Financial records, text messages, anything that shows a pattern of her behavior." Catherine set the papers down, folded her hands. "Right now, it's just her word against yours. We need to make sure yours is supported by evidence." Ryan thought about the watch, about the bank statements he'd pulled up that night. "I have bank records showing her spending, and I have proof she sold my father's watch without permission." "That's good. What else?" "I don't know. I wasn't planning for this." Catherine's expression softened slightly. "No one ever is. But we need to document everything from this point forward. Every interaction with her, every text message, every phone call. She's going to try to bait you into looking unstable or aggressive. Don't give her ammunition. She's already telling people I'm abusive. Let her. Talk is just talk until it's under oath." Catherine pulled out a legal pad, started making notes. "We'll need to respond to her filing within 20 days. In the meantime, I need you to gather every piece of financial documentation you have. Bank statements, credit card bills, receipts, anything that shows money coming in and going out." "She took photos of her packing up," Ryan said suddenly, remembering. "The night she left. I saw her on her phone, taking pictures of the boxes, making it look like I was forcing her out." "Of course she did." Catherine didn't sound surprised. "She's building a case. We'll build a better one." Over the next 2 weeks, Ryan's life became an exercise in documentation. He went through old bank statements, downloaded transaction histories, created spreadsheets showing Danielle's spending patterns. He found a receipt from the watch sale. She'd left it in her email, probably forgot it was connected to their shared account. He saved every text message, every voicemail, every interaction. And Danielle gave him plenty to document. She started small at first. Text messages asking to talk, claiming she wanted to work things out, saying she never meant for things to get this far. When Ryan responded with brief, formal replies, she escalated. The phone calls started coming late at night. 2 a.m., 3 a.m. When Ryan stopped answering, she left voicemails that swung wildly between tearful apologies and angry accusations. "I can't believe you're doing this to me. After everything I've sacrificed for you. You're pathetic, Ryan. You know that. You're so desperate to feel powerful that you're destroying our marriage. I still love you. We can fix this. Please just talk to me." He saved every voicemail, forwarded them to Catherine, tried not to feel anything when he heard Danielle's voice shift between personas. But it wasn't just the direct contact. Danielle had always been good at using other people as weapons, and now she deployed them strategically. Her sister called him at work, crying, begging him to reconsider. Danielle's devastated. "She's not eating. She's barely sleeping. How can you be so cruel?" Her mother sent an email detailing all of Danielle's supposed virtues, all the ways she'd been the perfect wife, all the ways Ryan had failed to appreciate her. Friends they'd shared, mostly Danielle's friends, really people who'd never particularly liked Ryan, started unfriending him on social media, but not before sending messages about what a disappointment he was, how they'd always known there was something wrong with him. And online, Danielle continued her campaign. More vague posts about survival and strength. Photos of herself looking sad and contemplative, captioned with quotes about betrayal and resilience. Check-ins at coffee shops with friends, showing the world that she was surviving, that she was surrounding herself with support. Ryan never responded publicly. Catherine had been clear. Silence was strength. Let Danielle perform for her audience. Let her exhaust herself with the performance. In court, none of it would matter. But privately, the weight of it accumulated. Ryan would come home from work to find his neighborhood had been canvassed. Danielle had talked to several neighbors, leaving her version of events like seeds that would grow into gossip. Mrs. Peterson from across the street no longer waved. Mr. Chun from next door looked away when their eyes met. One Saturday morning, Ryan was mowing the lawn when a car pulled up. Danielle's best friend, a woman named Jennifer who Ryan had never particularly liked, got out and marched across the grass toward him. Ryan turned off the mower. "You should be ashamed of yourself," Jennifer said without preamble. "I'm not doing this," Ryan said. "Danielle is falling apart. She trusted you. She built a life with you. And you just threw her away like she was nothing. You don't know what happened. I know enough. I know you're acting like a child because she made one mistake. One mistake." Ryan heard the flatness in his own voice. "Is that what she told you? She told me you've been controlling and cold for months. That you've been trying to isolate her from her friends. That you exploded over something minor and kicked her out with nowhere to go." Ryan looked at Jennifer's face, the righteous anger there, the certainty. She believed every word. Danielle had made sure of it. "I'm not going to argue with you," Ryan said. "Believe whatever you want. She loved you," Jennifer said, her voice breaking. "And you broke her heart." After she left, Ryan stood in his half-mowed lawn, feeling the sun on his shoulders, the smell of cut grass sharp in the air. He thought about Danielle's talent for narrative, for making herself the center of every story, for editing out any detail that didn't serve her purpose. His phone rang. "Catherine, we have a mediation date," she said. 3 weeks from now. Both parties will present their cases, and we'll see if we can reach a settlement before this goes to trial. What are our chances? Honestly, good. The evidence you've provided is strong. But be prepared. She's going to perform. She's going to cry. She's going to tell her version of events. She's going to try to make you look like a monster. Let her try, Ryan said. Those 3 weeks moved in a strange, slow motion. Work continued. Shipments to track, schedules to coordinate, problems to solve. Life continued. Groceries to buy, bills to pay, lawn to mow. But underneath everything was the constant awareness that a reckoning was coming. Ryan prepared methodically. Catherine had coached him on what to expect, how to behave, what to say and not say. Stay calm. Answer questions directly. Don't get defensive. Don't react to provocations. He practiced in front of the bathroom mirror, watching his own face, making sure his expression stayed neutral. He'd never been good at performing, at controlling his emotions for an audience. But if Danielle had taught him anything, it was that performance mattered. The mediation was held in a conference room downtown, generic and corporate, with a long table and too many chairs. Danielle arrived with her lawyer, a man in an expensive suit who had a reputation for aggressive tactics. She wore a conservative dress, minimal makeup, her hair pulled back. She looked younger than her 32 years, vulnerable, wounded. When their eyes met across the room, she looked away quickly, like the sight of him caused her pain. The mediator was an older man named Frank, patient and professional, who explained the process while everyone settled in. Then Danielle's lawyer started. He painted a picture of a marriage destroyed by Ryan's emotional coldness, his controlling behavior around money, his sudden and irrational demand that Danielle leave. He talked about her sacrifices, her support, her attempts to save the relationship. He presented a timeline of events that was technically accurate but completely distorted, each fact twisted just enough to change its meaning. And then Danielle spoke. She'd always been good at crying on cue, and she deployed that skill now. Her voice shook as she described feeling trapped, feeling like nothing she did was ever good enough. She talked about the watch, how she'd made a mistake, yes, but how Ryan's reaction had been so disproportionate, so frightening. "I thought he was going to hit me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryan's jaw tightened. Catherine's hand touched his arm briefly. a reminder to stay calm. I've been terrified, Danielle continued. He changed overnight. The man I married disappeared, and this stranger took his place. I don't feel safe. I don't know what he's capable of. The performance was flawless. If Ryan hadn't lived through the actual events, hadn't seen the calculation behind her tears, he might have believed it himself. When it was their turn, Catherine was methodical. She presented the bank statements, highlighted in yellow. Every expensive purchase, every cash withdrawal, every instance of spending that exceeded their income. She showed the pattern spanning years, not months. Then she presented the documentation about the watch. The email receipt showing Danielle had sold it to a collector for $800. The date of the sale, 3 days before her Arizona trip, not during some moment of desperate financial need. The text message where Danielle admitted to selling it, admitted to not asking permission. Mrs. Holloway didn't make one mistake, Catherine said. She made a pattern of decisions that prioritized her wants over her husband's needs, over their financial stability, over his emotional well-being. When he finally asked her to take responsibility, she escalated. She made herself the victim of a situation she created. Danielle's lawyer objected, called it character assassination. The mediator raised his hand. Let's look at the financial records. For the next hour, they went through the documentation. Every charge, every withdrawal, every expense that Danielle had dismissed as necessary or justified. In the sterile light of the conference room, with numbers on paper instead of Danielle's emotional appeals, the truth became impossible to ignore. She'd been spending money they didn't have. She'd been lying about it, hiding it, manipulating the narrative around it. And the watch that had started everything, was just the most egregious example of a much deeper pattern. Danielle's lawyer tried to pivot, tried to shift focus back to emotional abuse claims, but Catherine shut it down with evidence. Text messages from Danielle to her friends, sent months before the separation, complaining about being bored, about wanting to leave, about feeling like Ryan wasn't exciting enough. These messages show Mrs. Holloway was considering divorce long before the incident with the watch, Catherine said. She was looking for justification, and when Mr. Holloway finally stood up for himself, she found it. The mediator called for a break. Ryan went to the bathroom, splashed cold water on his face, stared at himself in the mirror. He looked tired, older, but steady. When they reconvened, Danielle's demeanor had changed. The tears were gone, replaced by something harder. She looked at Ryan with undisguised contempt. I want what I'm owed, she said. The mediator reviewed the evidence, made his recommendations. Given that the house was in Ryan's name, purchased with his inheritance, and that Danielle had contributed nothing to the mortgage payments, she had no legal claim to it. Given her spending patterns and lack of employment, spousal support was inappropriate. Given that they'd only been married for 4 years, the division of assets would be minimal. Mrs. Holloway, the mediator, said, "You're entitled to half of the marital assets acquired during the marriage. That includes furnishings, joint savings, and your personal property. However, Mr. Holloway's inheritance, the house, and his retirement account that predates the marriage are separate property." That's not fair, Danielle said. It's the law. The mediator pushed a document across the table. I'm recommending Mrs. Holloway receive $12,000 as her share of the liquidated marital assets. Additionally, she should return or reimburse Mr. Holloway for the watch, valued at $800. Danielle's face went red. This is bullshit. I gave him 4 years of my life. Her lawyer put a hand on her arm, whispered something. She shook her head, stood up abruptly. I'm not accepting this. We'll go to trial. I'll tell everyone what kind of man you really are, Ryan. Everyone will know. That's your right, the mediator said calmly. But I should inform you that taking this to trial will likely result in a less favorable outcome and significantly more legal fees. Catherine leaned back in her chair, relaxed. We're prepared to go to trial, if Mrs. Holloway prefers. Mr. Holloway has documentation supporting every claim. We're confident a judge will see the situation clearly. For a moment, Danielle just stood there, her hands clenched on the table, looking between Ryan and the mediator and her lawyer. Ryan could see her calculating, trying to find an angle, a way to flip the script. She found none. Fine, she said finally. But I'm not paying for the watch. That's ridiculous. Then we'll see you in court, Catherine said pleasantly. The mediation ended without resolution. Danielle stormed out, her lawyer following, already on his phone. Ryan and Catherine packed up their documents slowly. She'll settle, Catherine said. Give her a week to realize trial won't go her way. Her lawyer knows it too. And if she doesn't, then we win in court. Catherine smiled slightly. You did well today. Stay calm. Let the evidence speak. I didn't feel calm. You looked calm. That's what matters. 5 days later, Danielle's lawyer called with a revised offer. Danielle would accept the $12,000 and drop the claim for the watch reimbursement. In exchange, Ryan would agree not to pursue her for any of the credit card debt she'd accumulated. Catherine recommended accepting. It's a fair deal. Gets this over with faster. Ryan thought about the watch, about his father's hand pressing it into his palm. He thought about justice, about whether this outcome was enough. It wasn't enough. Not really. But it was over. Accept it, he said. The divorce was finalized on a Thursday morning in early December. Ryan sat in the courthouse with Catherine, watching the judge review the documents, sign the papers. The whole thing took less than 15 minutes. Danielle wasn't there. She'd waived her right to appear, sent her lawyer to represent her. In the end, she couldn't face it, couldn't face the reality that her narrative had collapsed, that the evidence had been too strong, that she'd lost. When it was done, Ryan stood outside the courthouse in the cold December air, holding a folder with the final divorce decree inside. Cars passed on the street. People walked by, wrapped in coats and scarves, going about their lives, having no idea that it had just fundamentally changed. Catherine shook his hand. Congratulations. You're free. Free. The word felt strange, too big to fit in his chest. He drove home through familiar streets, past the grocery store where he and Danielle used to shop, past the restaurant where they'd celebrated their anniversary, past all the landmarks of a life that no longer existed. The house was quiet when he walked in. It had been quiet for months now, but this was a different kind of quiet. Permanent. Final. Ryan walked through the rooms slowly, like he was seeing them for the first time. The living room where they'd fought that last night. The kitchen where she'd told him about the watch. The bedroom where he'd locked himself in, choosing himself over her for the first time. In his dresser drawer, he found the watch. He got it back eventually. After the mediation, before the final settlement, Danielle had sent it via courier with no note, no explanation. Just the watch in a box, dropped on his doorstep like it had never meant anything. Ryan held it now, feeling the weight of it, the cool metal against his palm. He wound it carefully, listened to the tick of the mechanism coming to life. Then he put it on his wrist. It fit perfectly like it always had. His phone buzzed. A text from Danielle. I hope you're happy now. Then another. You destroyed everything we built. Then another. I'll never forgive you for this. Ryan read the messages, feeling nothing. No anger, no guilt, no satisfaction. Just a quiet acknowledgement that she was still trying to write the story, still trying to make him the villain, still refusing to accept her role in how things had ended. He blocked the number. Some people don't deserve closure, he thought. They just deserve distance. Over the next few weeks, Ryan settled into his new reality. He paid off the credit cards, slowly. He fixed things around the house that he'd been putting off, the fence, the gutters, the garden. He had James over for dinner, and they sat on the back porch drinking beer, not talking about Danielle, just being brothers in the easy way they'd always been. He started running in the mornings, something he hadn't done since before the marriage. He joined a gym. He took a woodworking class at the community center and built a bookshelf that only wobbled slightly. He didn't date. Wasn't ready for that. But he had coffee with a woman from work one Saturday, and even though nothing came of it, he remembered what it felt like to talk to someone who listened, who responded honestly, who didn't twist his words into weapons. Slowly, the weight lifted. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, Ryan got a message from Jennifer, Danielle's friend, who confronted him in his yard. It was long, awkward, full of apologies. I'm sorry for what I said. Danielle told us you were abusive, but I've been hearing other things lately. About money she borrowed from friends and never paid back. About lies she told. I think maybe we got the wrong impression. Ryan didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Jennifer had chosen to believe Danielle without question, had chosen to attack him without hearing his side. Her apology didn't change that, but it confirmed something he'd suspected. The truth had a way of surfacing eventually. Danielle could control her narrative for a while, but she couldn't sustain it forever. Eventually, people would see the pattern. Eventually, her stories would contradict each other. Eventually, she'd burn through her supporters the same way she'd burned through everything else. On what would have been their 5th anniversary, Ryan sat in his quiet house with a glass of whiskey, his father's watch on his wrist, and thought about the man he'd been when he'd married Danielle. Young, optimistic, convinced that love and commitment were enough to overcome any obstacle. He wasn't that man anymore. He was someone harder, maybe more cautious, but also more himself, more aware of his own boundaries, more willing to defend them, more understanding that kindness without self-respect wasn't kindness at all. He thought about his father's words in that hospital room. Don't let people take advantage of your kindness, son. There's a difference between being good and being weak. He finally understood. Being good meant having standards, maintaining boundaries, refusing to accept treatment that diminished him. Being weak meant sacrificing those things in the name of peace or love or the desperate hope that someone would change. He'd been weak. For years, he'd been weak. But he wasn't anymore. The watch ticked steadily on his wrist, marking seconds that added up to minutes, to hours, to days. Time moving forward, the way it always did, indifferent to heartbreak or regret, or the small human dramas that felt so enormous when you were living them. Ryan finished his drink, washed the glass, went to bed. In the morning, he'd wake up in his quiet house. He'd make coffee. He'd go to work. He'd live his life. And he'd be free.